Unsolved.
JonBenet Ramsey case. The 5 clues in the ransom note. There's so many suspects in the JonBenet Ramsey case. There's all the people involved in the pageants, the photographers, the dressmakers, and then all the employees at Access Graphics, over 300 of them, and then the Ramseys' friends and the friends of their friends, and then the housekeeper and the babysitters and all the neighbors, and then all the people that work for the Ramseys. This is what I believe to be a photograph snapped by John Ramsey on Christmas morning, showing one of the writing pads that was turned over to the police. And then this photograph is one taken by the crime scene investigators on December 26th. And so here you can see a side-by-side view of the 2 photographs. And the one to the right shows the notepad. The author of the ransom note obviously knew some details about the Ramseys' household. For example, like the location of JonBenet's bedroom, because he didn't go into Burke's room, or he didn't go to the 3rd floor to the Ramseys' bedroom. And then he must have known that Patsy traveled down the back staircase in the mornings. And he had to know the location of the wine cellar and basement, because he had to know that there was a basement and where the door was to get down to the basement. And when he was in the basement, he had to know about that one door to get into the wine cellar. Now we start the 5 clues in the ransom note. And these clues are what the author of the ransom note must know in order to write it. He had this knowledge, or she had this knowledge. If the ransom note writer was just a stranger or a neighbor that didn't know that John had a business of his own, then he couldn't say that we respect your business. So it had to be somebody that knew that John Ramsey owned his own business. It sure seems like the ransom note writer had to know John Ramsey's bonus that he received, because how could he come up with this $118,000 that was the same amount as John Ramsey's yearly bonus that he received, I think, in February of 1996. So everybody involved in JonBenet's beauty pageants, the hairdressers, the photographers, the dressmakers, the other parents, they wouldn't know what John Ramsey's work bonus was. How would a complete stranger know that John Ramsey had a family? That he wasn't divorced, that he had a wife, he had children. He could have lived alone if somebody just off the street came in and tried to kidnap JonBenet and hold him for ransom. The author of the ransom note called John a fat cat. Well, how would he know that John Ramsey was super wealthy? This neighborhood, the other houses in the area, they weren't all wealthy people. The reason the Ramseys had such a big house is they had an addition done to their house which doubled the size of their house. But this wasn't a super wealthy area. The fact that John Ramsey moved from Atlanta to Boulder wasn't common knowledge. He didn't have a southern accent or act like a southerner, so his neighbors and new employees to his business, they would have never known that he was from the South. The person who wrote the ransom note had to have known all these details, had been in the house before, and knew a great deal about John and Patsy Ramsey. And so maybe it was somebody related to the housekeeper Linda Hoffman. Or maybe again, it might have been just Patsy Ramsey. This is from John Ramsey's book, Death of Innocence. I provided her a pad of 8 by 11 paper that also contained samples of Patsy's handwriting. It was reported that during their investigation, the police had discovered part of a practice ransom note on one of the pads I had given them. It reportedly only said Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey. The police immediately saw this evidence as supporting the theory of our guilt. This is from Lawrence Schiller's Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. As he was going through Patsy's pad, he noticed something extraordinary. Toward the middle of the tablet, a few words were written on a page in black felt tip pen. Mr. and Mrs., along with a single downstroke that could easily have been the beginning of a capital R. The paper appeared the same as the one on which ransom note was written. Apparently, this was a first draft, and after consideration, the writer had decided to address the note to Mr. Ramsey only. This is from another source. Meanwhile, the CBI informed the Boulder police that some other handwriting discovered on the pad used for the ransom note was apparently written with the same felt-tip pen used for the note. This handwriting, found on pages immediately preceding the place where the ransom note pages had been torn out, consisted of the phrase Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, and later became known as the practice note. So I just realized something. Game over. If the preceding pages were written by Patsy and they used the same felt-tipped pen, then Patsy had to have written the ransom note. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved with all of its overlays over photographs and video that I could muster. And I'll see you next weekend for another exciting episode of Unsolved.